Cass, let's look back on a little bit of yesterday. We'll try and dissect more of the games in detail throughout the show. But it all kicked off yesterday with that lunchtime game between Arsenal and Newcastle. Arsenal, it took until the second half for them to secure the victory in the end against bottom side Newcastle. Saka and Martinelli getting the goals in the second half. Arsenal, we saw against Liverpool, we sort of talked about them previously in the sense that they'd gone on this 10-game unbeaten run, but in that 10-game unbeaten run, they'd been playing sides in the bottom half of the table. The game against Liverpool, that was the true test, and we know what happened in that one. Taking on Newcastle, I suppose it was very much expected that they would probably win that game, and it ended up being fairly comfortable, didn't it?
Yeah, it did, Arsenal. Yeah, well, one thing, and I said yesterday that I wasn't sure about whether Tavares would play yesterday because of obviously his performance at Anfield, which up against Mo Salah was always an incredibly big ask, and he'd done really, really well. And the manager went with him again, and he played really well. And, he's up against Ryan Fraser. It's not Mo Salah. There is a different quality there. The difference in Arsenal is their wide players, Smith Rowe and Saka. And Saka's goal is what he's capable of. The movement is exceptional. And, just generally, I thought Arsenal looked like the side we know that is developing. We can see it's a developing side. Ben White has settled in brilliantly now. He's far more assured than when he first arrived at the Emirates. He looks like a confident and very, very... I like this in players who do the simple things really well. When you have a player that do the simple things of ABCs, of just move it, get it, give it to someone who can do the things you can't. Paul Maguire was the best that I'd ever played with, who was like that. Paul Maguire never run past people, and he played in Ben White's position. He was not a player that would dribble or do brilliant things technical, but he was fantastic at keeping that ball and moving it simply. And Ben White's got a bit of that in him. And if he keeps developing, Ben White will certainly make the England team on a regular as a starter.
I don't want to talk too much about Newcastle because I know we're going to be talking to Graham Courtney, our man up in the northeast, about the situation with them. But you're talking about Arsenal developing. 2 games in for Eddie Howe, and Newcastle developing.
Well, we've had this conversation how many weeks ago now when we talked about, how many, I think I said when they had 11 games before the window opened. And I said my biggest fear for them was that would they be able to keep around the sort of, or trying to bridge that gap between the teams that are just above them in the sort of 16th, 17th for place. Yeah. And now they're just getting a little bit too, and uncomfortably a little bit adrift. And with their goal difference as well, which even you could add another point on you, although they're 6 adrift, you could argue, well, they're really 7 because their goal difference is quite poor. So they're in a predicament. And I think Eddie Howe's biggest challenge is now till New Year of picking up points somewhere. And I think that showed yesterday. They didn't offer much. And he even talked about it after the game. There's a real lack of belief. And that's challenging for a manager where you're trying to find something. Where am I going to get a bit more? How do we get this a bit of drive into the Christmas period? Because the problem you have at this time of year is the number of games.
Yes,
absolutely. This, if you again, if we take Newcastle going and they were playing abroad, okay, like I did when I was in France, is that sort of as you get to sort of 18th, 20th of December, you're having a 3-week break.
Winter break, yeah.
So you don't have nowhere near as many games. We go into the most challenging part of the season within the next week or so, where there's a lot of games very quickly. And Eddie Howe probably dreads the fact that is, what happens with our Premier League because we don't stop. We continue.
I suppose the only saving grace, and I say this lightly, for Newcastle is their next 2 fixtures, possibly and it's very early on in the season to be talking about 6-pointers, but it is against Norwich and it is against Burnley, 2 sides who are directly above them in the table as things stand. Again, and both at home as well. So Eddie Howe will be looking at those as fixtures, must-win fixtures for them to get themselves out of the trouble that they're in. We'll talk more about Newcastle a little bit later on.